good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever part of the day you are tuning in. It does not matter. Welcome. Welcome to day 9 of Brian's Winter's Read Aloud. Today we will be reading chapters 12 and 13. A couple quick shout outs. Just want to shout out everybody who's been tuning in every day, whether you tuned in the first day in the first chapter, whether you tuned in yesterday. As long as you're watching, I appreciate you. Next, I want to shout out Josiah. Josiah has been doing such a good job of making sure that his work is done. He's been doing such a good job of putting a lot of effort into his answers and communicating with Mr. Jones. Also, shout out to Mrs. Irving as well, because she's been just as great as communicating with Mr. Jones about Josiah's assignments as Josiah has too. Lastly, I want to shout out Aaliyah Mitchell in Miss Bogan's class. So, Aaliyah drew me a picture, and she just wanted to just make sure that I was doing okay and that all her teachers are doing okay. But another thing she said was that she was sad that no one besides the kids in my two classes get shout outs. And I apologize for that. I can only see dojo messages and only really communicate with students that are in my classes. So it's kind of hard for me to shout out other students in other classes. But I just want to make it known that I do appreciate your efforts. I do appreciate you still advocating for yourselves and still wanting to learn in these times. So don't think that your efforts are going unnoticed. So if you're not in Spelman or Morehouse cohort in 4th grade, or if you're not in 4th grade at all and you've still been tuning in with Mr. Jones, just know that I appreciate you and shout out to you. So with that being said, we're going to quickly talk about chapters 10 and 11 before we read 12 and 13. So 10 and 11, it was kind of just more struggles with winter, with things that Brian had to do to prepare himself. So it's kind of just those issues of it's not one thing, it's another. And he was doing okay on food, but was still struggling with his gear. And still staying warm in the winter and being able to do what he needed to do when it would rain or when it would snow, and just getting used to what it would be like in winter. So he was kind of just stuck in this limbo of, is this going to be my life? What do I need to do? How do I need to figure out how to survive in the winter? So now we're going to see some more measures that Brian is taking as far as like what he needs to do mentally and physically to survive the winter in the forest. All right. Chapter 12. It did not rain again, nor did the snow go away. The temperature stayed down, and in 4 days it snowed lightly, maybe an inch, and then in 4 more days another inch or 2, and then in 4 more days, regular as clockwork, winter came. The snow never came deeply, never another wild blizzard, just an inch or 2 every 4 days, but the snow didn't leave between times, it didn't melt, and before long there was a foot on the ground, a foot of dry powder. At first it was all very settled and comfortable. Brian's clothing seemed to work. He had plenty of meat and plenty of firewood, although he had to go some distance to get it. He knew how much wood it would take for a given time and brought in enough for a week. It took a full day, and then had nothing to do the rest of the week except work his moose hide clothing against the wooden peg to soften it and eat moose meat stew. Summer had been so active, and now he had suddenly come to a virtual stop. He couldn't fish anymore because the ice was too thick to chop through with the hatchet. He didn't need to hunt because he figured, roughly 400 pounds of moose left to eat. Lying by the fire one evening, softening hide, he did some rough math, and if he ate 4 pounds of moose meat a day, he would make at least 100 days before needing more meat. More than 3 months. Let's see, he thought. It was late November. No, early December. No, wait. He counted the days on his marks and decided it was the last week in November. Thanksgiving. He'd forgotten Thanksgiving. He could do that. Have a Thanksgiving meal. The date was a little off. He would be late, but it felt good to think of it, and he prepared for it as if he were home. He would eat moose, of course, but he had found that the hump meat was the best meat, and he chopped a 3-pound piece off the frozen block by his door. He would need more. Some kind of sauce. Then he remembered the berries. On one of his wood gathering runs, he'd gone past the north end of the lake, and there he had been a string of small, scraggly trees loaded with bright red berries. Because everything was under a foot of snow and he hadn't seen a berry since summer, these berries, looking fresh and bright, even though they were frozen solid, struck him as very odd. They looked delicious and hung in small clumps, and he smelled them, then took a handful and popped them into his mouth. At first he couldn't taste them because they were frozen, but as soon as they thawed, he got the flavor. They were tangy and had a mild bitter taste that made him want to pucker. Also, they had large pits. They were very similar to the gut cherries he'd had trouble with during the summer, except that they didn't make him sick, and the sour taste reminded him of something else he couldn't at first place, and later remembered as a vinegar or a sour sauce flavor. They would make a good sauce for a Thanksgiving meal. And he went along the lake shore and picked one of them smaller aluminum pans full, and it was in this way that he learned about snowshoes. It did not come that fast. There was about a foot of snow, powder but with a stiffness, and as he walked along the lake in his deer-high boots, he startled a rabbit from beneath an evergreen, and it took off like a shot. All changed to white across the snow. Without sinking in, Brian watched it run away and had taken another 4 or 5 steps when it hit him that the rabbit was running on top of the snow while Brian was sinking in with each step. He moved to the rabbit's tracks and studied them. They were huge, fully twice the size of the feet he had seen on rabbits earlier, and when he examined the tracks more closely, he saw that the rabbit had grown hair to increase the size of his feet, and he thought how perfect they were to be able to do that. Change color in the winter and grow bigger feet to stay on top of the snow? How perfect. And he set the information back in his mind and went on about preparing for Thanksgiving. He packed snow in with the berries and put them on the fire to melt and boil. Then he put the hump meat in the large pan with snow and set that on to boil as well. So much, he thought, for cooking Thanksgiving dinner. What he wanted was a table and a chair and a tablecloth. No, he thought, what he wanted was a turkey and all the trimmings and then a table and chairs and tablecloth and his mother and father sitting with him and milk. Oh yes, a cold glass of milk and a bread and butter and potatoes and gravy. And what he wanted more than anything was out, to be back in the world, to have all that stuff and be back in the world and then go to a movie. No, to sit and watch television with your belly packed and watch a football game and belch. And that was what he wanted. What he did instead was clean his shelter. He had been sleeping on the foam pad that had come with the survival pack, and he straightened everything up and hung his bag out in the sun to air dry, and then used a hatchet to cut the ends of new evergreen boughs and laid them like a carpet in the shelter. As soon as he brought the boughs inside and the heat from the fire warmed them, they gave off the most wonderful smell, filled the whole shelter with the odor of spring, and he brought the bag back inside and spread the pad and bag and felt as if he were in a new home. The berries boiled first, and he added snow water to them and kept them boiling until he had kind of a mush in the pan. By the time the meat had cooked and he set it off to the side, he tasted the berry mush. Bitter, he thought, but tangy, and not all that bad, and he cut a piece of moose hump off and then a thin slice and dipped it in the sauce and ate it in 2 bites. It was delicious, almost like having steak sauce or kind of a bitter ketchup. He took another cut of meat, dipped it, ate it as well, the juice dripping down his chin, and was on his third one when he realized this was his Thanksgiving dinner. And I'm eating like a wolf, he thought, before I give thanks. It stopped him, the idea of giving thanks. At first his mind just stopped, and he thought, for what? For the plane crash? For being here? I should thank somebody for that? Then a small voice, almost a whisper, came into his mind, and all it said was, it could have been worse. You could have been down in the plane with the pilot. And he felt awful for his attitude, turned away from the food and forced himself to be grateful for all the good luck he'd had and to not think about all the bad at all. Just that, escaping from the plane alive, that was luck. And to be able to live and learn and know things, to be able to hunt, to be thankful for the animals' lives that had been spent to keep him food, to keep him fed, to be thankful for the deer and the moose. Lord, the moose was like getting a whole food store, and to be thankful for a shelter and knife and the hatchet. The hatchet, the key to it all. Nothing without the hatchet, just that would take all his thanks. And every stick, every twig of wood that burned to keep him warm, and his sleeping bag, and Betty saving him from the bear, and the chickadees that hung around the camp, and the sun that brought each new day. All that, he thought, all that and more to be thankful for. And he ended the prayer. He ended the prayer as it had seemed to become, with another thought about the pilot down in the lake. He hoped the pilot had a good life and was where it was good for him now. Then he ate, quietly thinking of his mother and father, and when he finished his Thanksgiving, it was dark, pitch dark, and he crawled into his bag to sleep and had just closed his eyes and started to get drowsy when he heard the gunshot. Scene. So, that's where it ends. He hears a pop gunshot sound, and that's going to take us into the next chapter. But before we get into the next chapter, I just want to quickly talk about that chapter and ask you a few questions. So in that chapter, he basically has like a little makeshift Thanksgiving dinner because he realizes, man, I've been here for a while. He counts the days up and he realizes that it's the last week of November. And if you understand the holiday calendar, the 4th Thursday in November is Thanksgiving, and usually that fourth Thursday is usually either the second to last week in November or the last week. So he was either right at Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving. So he wanted to make this dinner a special dinner by making it a Thanksgiving dinner. The only thing he could really do to have extra food besides that was to get some berries and use it as a cranberry sauce or something, I guess, this Thanksgiving dinner. So he did that. And then when he started eating and he realized that he was feasting, because the point of Thanksgiving is to be thankful for everything you have, and you have a big feast to kind of, culminate that, he forgot it to take a moment of thanks. And at first he was like, I shouldn't be thankful for anything because I'm in a bad place. But then he realized that there were people that were in worse places than him. For example, the pilot who didn't get to live through the plane crash. And then once that, it kind of started a snowball effect or a domino effect of all the things he was thankful for, whether it be the shelter, the food, the fire, the animals he found and killed and ate, and all those things. So that brings me to my first question for this chapter, which is, what did Brian realize after he named all those things he was thankful for? So he realized something. He learned a lesson. He was being taught something by him thinking that. What did he learn after he realized that he should be thankful for a lot more things, a lot more of his good luck than he should be angry at his bad luck? So what did he learn from that? And then building off of that, the second question, I guess, would be, so based off of what Brian learned about being thankful and based off of what Brian learned about what it meant for him to have all those good things happen, even in the midst of something bad happening, what was the author trying to teach us? What was the main idea of this chapter by having Brian go through this journey of, at first, he wasn't thankful for all that he had, and then once he realized one thing he should be thankful for, he realized many things he was thankful for. What was the author trying to teach us or tell us in this chapter? After you answer those questions, write them down, type them out, send them to your teacher, and then we'll get right on along with chapter 13.